Kickstart green tea for the morning. Hello everybody, my name is Oliver and my mission is to bring you closer to organic Japanese green tea. And today what we're gonna dive into is into the Kickstart, or one of the Kickstart green teas in Japan. We are diving into Gyokuro. When I talk about Kickstart, pick me up, it is actually a tea when we want to go for a stronger caffeinated variant of green tea. And when we dive into the Japanese green tea world, what we see is that we have the Gyokuro, and the Gyokuro is one of the longest shaded tea. Long shading and young buds equal lots of caffeine. Essentially you have two teas, so one is the Gyokuro where we are in the leaf section, and one is the matcha. These are the two most caffeinated green teas you can find in Japan. And these two teas are actually, due to the fact that they are very long shaded, especially rich in caffeine. And why is this actually so? So when we dive into the plantation or planting green tea, the last weeks are very important. And what we found, or what a Japanese farmer found out, that not only by covering the tea plants to protect them against frost, but also to just have them covered for a longer period renders them smoother, renders them sweeter, renders them stronger in umami, which is kind of the taste buds or the taste type what people in Japan are looking for in a strong Japanese green tea, in a high-grade Japanese green tea. But essentially what it does as well is it brings up more the caffeine content. And why is that so? So in this phase of these last weeks before the harvest, so here we talk about 3 weeks to up to even 4 weeks of just covering the tea plant with a nylon net and with a nylon coverage, a black one, which you can see in Japan when you're just before the harvest strolling around the tea fields. Often you see just this covered with black tissue tea fields, and this is that these renders then the teas sweeter and makes them smoother as well. But it essentially also does cut the green tea plant from the sunlight, and this then finally gives it a more stressful situation. The plant tries to absorb as many nutrients as it can because it needs it. It produces a lot of chlorophyll, and it also tries to protect itself better, and the protection goes through the caffeine, because the caffeine renders the tea leaves a little bit bitter. It's not for us that we sense this a lot, but the bugs definitely sense it, and then they don't bite the tea leaves. So the reason that these tea leaves are rich in caffeine is just an additional protection of the tea plant against the bugs, because it feels that it could get in a weak in a little bit fight situation, and for that the tea plant wants to have the most protection, and it gives itself that through the caffeine. And that's why the longest shaded teas are often the highest in caffeine. And that's why matcha, for example, so ceremonial grade, premium grade matcha, or also Gyokuro is a long shaded tea, and then sweeter but also more caffeine rich. Good. I'll talk in a second about the sweetness, but first let's just have a look at the leaves. So we can see that these leaves are really, really dark. So they're really going into a deep shade green, dark color. So this is a typical view of Gyokuro. No stems, so you can see there are no real white spots. There are no kind of wooden parts in these leaves. These are pure leaves, very beautifully, tightly rolled. You can see one example here, for example. You can see it. It's quite a long needle shape for a Japanese green tea, and also the deep dark color. This is a typical sign for the Gyokuro, a typical sign also for the shading of this tea. So in terms of sweetness, why is also actually Gyokuro quite sweet? Sweetness in terms of that it has really a smooth, delicate and full and rich body to it. And this comes from the amino acid theanine. Theanine is also a compound which comes from the roots to the leaves. of the tea plant. And what the shading actually prevents is when the sunlight touches the ripe leaves, then the leaves, they start to turn the theanine into catechins, which makes the tea a little bit more bitter, sometimes even a little bit more harsh. But by through the covering of the tea leaves, then you actually don't, or you avoid, or you reduce this process, and these tea plants are a little bit less rich in catechins and bring just much more this umami flavor in front, which is sometimes can even be a little bit seaweedy, but very smooth, very sweet at the same time. So it's a super complex taste profile, but it renders the tea really smooth and round. And that's a speciality about the Gyokuro, that it is a strong tea. It can be sometimes when you start your tea journey a little bit overwhelming, but over time this tea becomes super interesting, and it is super interesting, especially for the pick-me-up moment, for a kickstart in the morning, as it is high, as it is rich also in caffeine. But in combination with the polyphenols and the theanine, you always have a little bit this balancing out of the caffeine, and that's the beauty of this tea. So we're just gonna use 5 grams here, put it in a smaller Kyusu. So this time for Gyokuro, I'm using a little bit of a smaller teapot, as you can see. So it's a little bit a smaller one. I like to do that just to get a little bit more of an extra kick in flavor as well. So we try to brew a little bit of a stronger tea this morning. And then I just add 65 degrees Celsius, so around 155 Fahrenheit. This is the maximum. Even people brew it between 50 and 60 degrees Celsius. This is between 125 and 140 Fahrenheit. Here I like my tea a little bit hotter, so I chose for 155. Glass, very important. What we're going to do is also we're going to leave it in for 2 minutes. 2 minutes for Gyokuro, a little bit longer than a sencha. Sencha we talk normally about 1 minute. 1 minute just to unfold the leaves, but the Gyokuro is a little bit tighter rolled. You could see the beautiful needle shape which I showed you before. So this is really a typical tea of coming from a Gyokuro, and then the leaves are just a little bit tighter rolled, and then you have to give it a little bit more time just to unfold. This tea coming from the farmer Mr. Sakamoto in the south of Japan. So here we are on the island of Kyushu. We are in Shibushi to be exact, and this is around 45 minutes by car into the countryside from Kagoshima, which is at the southern tip of Japan, of the main island, the most southern and the biggest city. And Kagoshima has become a very, very big cultivation region for green tea, and especially for organic green tea it is quite famous. So I think our 2 minutes, we are close to be finished, and let's have it. Good. So you can see a little bit less water, typical small Kyusu. What's also nice about this Kyusu, for example, I can show it to you just right now. Voilà. So we have here a clay sifter, you can see, so there's no metal, no nothing, so it's just a built-in clay sifter. It is said that with the metal sifter, which we have like with this one here, for example, I can show you. So this is a metal sifter, you can see it, it goes around. This one here actually is a little bit, or it is said that sometimes the tea leaves can a little bit clog the metal strainer. I've never made the experience. I like the black clay filter, it just fits perfectly with the Gyokuro. It looks very pretty, but all in all, when you have a metal sifter, this is also very fine. Here, I just went really for this one here because it has a smaller size, allowing me to brew the tea still with a good temperature, because the bigger ones, they're just, when you're using a little bit of less water, it just cools the water down a little bit more. You can preheat it, so this you can, like this, you can avoid it. But now today, I really chose the smaller Kyusu for a little bit more of concentration for the flavor of this beautiful tea. Good. So what we can see is that this tea has not a very intense green color, so it has a little bit of a milky texture as well. So you can see behind, when I put my finger behind, you cannot really see anything. So it's quite cloudy. This is the reason, because it's the rich in theanine, so amino acid, very, very strong in this tea. So it allows you to have a little bit of a thicker, a little bit more of a full-bodied, and a little bit more nearly of a creamy texture. So I expect this tea to have a little bit of a kind of a creamy note, maybe a little bit of a cashewy note, not too vegetal, very strong in umami. So let's dive into this tea taste. So this tea is made with the okomidori, it's made of a samidori, and it's a yabukita. So it's a blend, so Mr. Sakamoto mixes together different tea varietals. And what is very beautiful about this one here, so this is the Sasahime Gyokuro. He actually puts together okomidori, which is more creamy, full-bodied, has a little bit of a vegetal note. Then you have yabukita, a little bit more vegetal, also good in umami, and the samidori brings very much sweetness and fineness into the tea. So it's a good mix of all these three, and what I find is also with the Sasahime, what he achieves is that you have on the one hand you have a nice umami flavored tea. It's very round, very sweet, and at the same time he brings in quite a good amount of this more vegetal flavor profile. And it must be the mix between the okomidori varietal and the yabukita varietal, which just provokes this taste a little bit more. And that's why I personally like this tea a lot. A very good tea also for cold brew. So if you ever want to go for a cold brew in summertime, this one here is definitely a good choice. I get a little bit of ripe banana. I get a little bit of kind of sweetness. Then you have a umami, so it drifts off nearly a little bit of a ocean breezy, kind of a little bit more salty, but it goes back directly then to the sweet. So that's this complex taste play which you have with the Gyokuro, which is super interesting. As soon as you have developed a little bit of a palate, can maybe be a little bit not shocking, but a little bit surprising in the beginning. And then, so we really got this fruity kind of note in the beginning, then it goes over into this umami, and then in the end it really develops in a full-bodied and a very smooth and creamy texture of the tea. So it's quite rich, quite mineral rich, quite nutrient rich, and you really feel it when it glides over your tongue that this tea is just very rich. And thanks to the fact that I'm using a little bit less water, you even intensify this profile even more. So let's go into the second brewing. So this tea, you can easily do it 4 times. I will now go into just the second brewing, just 20 seconds. It's more than enough. Good. Yeah, voilà. Let's see. So here we have a little bit more of a vegetal. Before I didn't smell the leaves, but it's clear the leaves themselves, they bring more the vegetal note in. But it seems to develop. You see also that the tea got a little bit greener, so now we moved a little bit away from the golden. It's not that milky anymore, so not that cloudy. You still cannot see my finger, but it got a little bit less cloudy, a little bit more green. So expect it to have a hint more of this vegetal flavor, maybe in the sweetness going a little bit down. So let's see. So it loses a little bit in the umami, but it kind of balances out the tea very nicely. Against my expectation that it's more kind of vegetal, it has a similar vegetal taste than before. And you have a little bit more cream a little bit of a pineapple taste even, so a little bit kind of the sweetness, the hint of sweetness. Before it was quite a strong banana peel flavor, and now it turns a little bit more to the slight pineapple taste profile. So quite interesting in terms of just moving away from this stronger sweetness a little bit to a lighter sweetness. A little bit more sweetness and the umami flavor, so it doesn't drift off anymore in this little bit ocean breeze, but still very much on the sweet level. Now I'm very curious. I want to do a third one. But still has a beautiful, umami flavor profile in the end. So it coming up, but it's just a little bit more delayed, I would say. But it's not as strong as in the first brewing. Definitely not as strong. Good. So just give it a short amount of time, and then still very sweet, but now it starts a little bit to fade in terms of taste. So first two brewings definitely very strong. Now it starts to fade a little bit. I still get the vegetal, I still get the smoothness, but you definitely have a little bit of a less strong tea. So here a nice balance in the end between the vegetal, a little bit of sweetness, a hint of sweetness, not as strong in the umami flavor, so the umami flavor also goes a little bit away, but definitely the first and second brewing quite strong. First one really sweet and umami rich, a little bit more this ocean breeze, a little bit more this intensity of a typical Gyokuro. In the second one, going more into kind of a smooth sweetness mixed with a nice vegetal and the delayed umami flavor. And here in the third one, I'm quite balanced, but more of a sweet hint. Mixed with a slight, or with a smooth vegetal note, I would say. So it gets a little bit weaker in the third one, but definitely the first two ones, definitely a good pick. So this one to start today. Now I got around, I didn't talk about the caffeine content. So when we talk about the caffeine content, we talk about 135 milligrams of caffeine. This is a quite strong Robusta coffee, so you're on a very similar level than a normal coffee. So Gyokuro definitely up there with the coffee, but you have the additional benefit of the theanine, which is just also relaxing you a little bit, because it's one of the only things in nature which can break through your blood-brain barrier and then trigger alpha brain waves, so bringing you in a more relaxed but in an awakened state. Good. So this last small video at the end of this video. I hope you like this one here, and if you have a question, do not hesitate. Please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and help us to make Japanese green tea, and especially organic Japanese green tea, the new thing. Thanks a lot. See you and bye bye.